we wanted to make sure that we ended the day with talking about what we heard today. So I don't know if you have any key points that you want to share with the group that kind of were take-home messages that you think this dialogue surfaced for you.
Sure. I'll start. I'll make promises that they will have to fulfill. No, I'll be careful not to do that. It's been an incredibly informative day for me. It helps me understand all the connections that we need to make and the support we need to give to the biopreferred team that came to us. So we actually have a meeting. I was sitting here today and said, let's schedule a meeting when we get back on Thursday to start talking about all the things. I have several pages full of notes and things to follow up on, and we need to prioritize them. We have a lot of other things going on, so we can't focus solely on what we heard here today, but certainly there are so many things that we need to do a better job, and we need to understand and partner with the people in this room. So don't be surprised if you get a phone call from us, an opportunity to come over to USDA, or we might go out to the Pentagon and walk over those floor mats and meet with you face to face to get more of the details, not just in the procurement and the acquisition part of it, but also I think the biggest, one of the biggest things is we need to see what our role would be in communicating and helping promote the understanding of what that label, biopreferred label, means to government agencies. If we need to pick up the phone, if we need to have webinars, we need to have opportunities to interact. We've got all these I have. They're probably cringing right here, so I'll turn it over to them before the list gets too long.
I definitely appreciate the opportunity to last couple of days, and I'll be around also tomorrow morning again. So anybody has some other thoughts or one-on-one, I'd be glad to have additional conversation. I think we've probably gained a little bit more than we bargained for, even to the point where the conversations, the input was greatly appreciated. I guess some of my takeaways are thinking about a little sense of maybe playing off of the end of the last presentation, talking about lead in buildings, kind of using a building analogy, is that we need to pay attention to the foundation, right? Kind of the fundamentals of the programs that we're operating. So it's the procurement program, the labeling program, making sure we have the fundamentals strong. So keep focusing on that. We know the Farm Bill gave us some directions on some parts to that. We haven't talked much about a couple of those points of maybe trying to streamline things a little bit as to access to the program, kind of what the program does, making sure that we're inclusive, of renewable chemicals and other products that we're definitely trying to support. But then once we have that foundation in shape, kind of building on it, and how do we do that? I think that's where the conversation here and going forward is going to be very valuable to us to help out.
I would just echo what Mark and Betty had just said, and one thing I think we became even more aware is we have a lot of catching up to do in terms of getting a better handle of this program and how it works with you, and so we're going to be on an accelerated learning curve. I think one of the biggest takeaways I have is our last speaker who said, really, you got to be at the table. And I think that's what I'm coming here is you all are showing that willingness to be at the table these last 2 days. The amount of knowledge, experience, leadership, and most importantly, I think here what I'm taking away is your passion for this and your desire to see something like this go. So it's been an incredible experience for me. I've been around the government for 30-some years. I can probably say if this is not the best, this is probably in the the top 2 or 3 meetings I've ever attended. So for that, I thank you for the invitation here, for all your hospitality, and for really showing that commitment by taking the time. I know you all have got other things that you could be doing, and you probably got a bazillion things going to happen when you get back. So thank you for coming here and letting us know what we can do to help you.
Thank you, and certainly it's been great to have your team here with us, and we intentionally chose to bring this event to Georgia because there's so much going on the bio-based economy here, and it is the rural America. We went there yesterday. Thoughts on how the USDA offices in the states are going to be hearing about bio-based, and I know you have a lot of things to think about, but they're going to be very important, aren't they, as we move forward?
Yeah, I'll start out there. I mean, one is what we can do is I am a little bit embarrassed that I didn't catch the Minnesota display out there sooner. That part of that, some of that research came out of the Agriculture Utilization Research Institute, or ARI, out of Minnesota. And just, we've been committed to you guys far longer than you even thought. We helped fund ARI back in 2002 with a program that was administered out of rural development called the Agriculture Innovation Center that I think helped launch them. We've used, or ARI has used our programs throughout that cycle. So we've been there, and I think that's one thing we're finding out, that we've probably had more of a presence or participation in the bio-based economy. We just weren't really looking, or it wasn't something that was drawn out for us or asked. I go back to my project that I'm obsessed with is Vidalia denim, and so get me on the side. I'll talk to you. I'll talk for 3 hours on this project. But I think what we're seeing is, as we talk, we have a lot of communication with our state offices. We've already reached out to them talking about this program and what it's going to do. We're going to hopefully have Kate and Vernell do some webinars for. We've introduced it to our state directors at a meeting we had earlier this year in Louisiana. And now we'll be going down into a more granular, to the program level, to the people who are really going to be delivering programs.
Yeah, I think I would add to that is, over the last, well, especially through this administration, but even prior to it, looking at program performance, come across our programs. Performance not in the sense of just delivering the program, but the impacts of those programs in rural communities. We're always looking for opportunities to have greater impacts. So I think where we can look at things like the the bio-based products, product markets, the impacts that advancing that economy in our rural communities can have. And how we can use our other programs. Some are even our small, Andy mentioned the value-add producer grant, but we have others that could help out with, some of the ancillary businesses, support businesses, all the way up through our biorefinery program on the large scale, of being able to further advance some of our programs, but by overlapping some of the activities. And again, looking at what the impacts, how we can better have more impact or enable greater impacts at the rural community level.
Well, I'd just like to also add, this. I hope you have recognized that this is a team effort on behalf of USDA and rural development. That we're not going to go back and say, "Okay, Kate, go to town, go get busy. You've got a lot to do." But each of us has a role in how we can help further the awareness and understanding, streamlining, all of those things. It is definitely a team effort, and it's also very timely this time of year when you talk about the state involvement. And we are right in the process now of establishing goals for our states at each of the state levels, and they'll be getting those in the next month or so. And included in that may have to be some sort of component that awards them or recognizes them for an involvement in a bio-based project, or helping a manufacturer that may have that component. So it's not a significant major idea, but it also helps open that door and helps them put that on their list or on their focus, as they have so many things in the state offices to focus on. This would be something that that I think would help them, and also help the communities as they work to make a big impact in their actual state. Each state is different, but I think that might be something we can consider as we're establishing those goals.
That's a really good point. Those state offices are very busy. So how do we get them excited about bio-based, or feel like they have the time to take on one more thing? To be honest, a lot of the folks in the room, when they've tried to get people to buy bio-based from a procurement side, they're like, I got all these requirements of me, so I'll do what is easiest for me. And some of this is not going to be easy. People are going to have to be really passionate within those state offices. So what do we do to help drive this forward?
I think initially is somehow help make that connection back to people. the product. And I know when you're purchasing, especially if you're a federal agency, if you're purchasing, it's got to perform, it's got to be available, it's got to have that price point and all that. But there is a story behind it. And I am anxious to work with you all to be able to tell that story when I'm out speaking. I speak quite often to all sorts of groups and talk about economic development opportunities and our involvement, but it is always better to be able to tell those success stories and not talk about what we do, but the stories that you all do because of somewhere along the line we were involved. And so I think that helps generate the excitement. Even simple things like when we introduced the BioPreferred program to our state directors, we could have just stood up there in front of the room and said, here's our program, this is what it does, and do the quote government presentation. But instead we decided, all right, we're going to ask each of them to go to their local grocery store and look for the label on products in your grocery store. It's that easy. And I even tested it. I went to the grocery store that was about 1.5 miles from the USDA office. I did it during my lunch hour. I ran down there. I took pictures and selfies of me holding labels, and it's amazing how many you find right there in your grocery store. And so we challenged our state directors to do the same, and they not 100% participation, but it really created a little bit of excitement and some understanding with, and we can do more of those things. We've got a great team, a lot of creativity, and so it's more than just talking, it's engaging people in new and different ways, and I'm really excited for the opportunities we'll have to do that.
So, and again, this was unrehearsed. This is kind of putting you on the spot a little bit, but if we're asking you to reflect back on the day, but obviously we want to continue having input. So we talk about, if you were to ask the people in the room to go home and think about what they've heard today and what the next steps might be, what kind of information do we need to get back to you at USDA?
Well, I'll start on that and give you guys the opportunity to think ahead. So to me, what I would like for this group to think about is how can we keep this thought process, how can we keep this discussion going without creating a lot more meetings, a lot more opportunities. It's great to be together face to face, and it's great to not be so exclusive that others can't join us that aren't here today. But how can we keep that going? And it's hard to say, well, USB, you need to do this meeting every month or every quarter or something like that. That's not really what I'm asking, but we really need to think about opportunities to keep the conversation going, not just face-to-face, but if there is some sort of social media or some sort of way to make it easy to bring people together and to keep that collaboration and the innovation going. We heard some incredible opportunities or stories today of people that took a thought, an idea, a passion, and went somewhere with it. And that needs to continue, and without inhibiting the ingenuity and the creativity that you have shown here so far. So I would like to say that would be my priority, and I'd certainly want to follow up to make sure that gets done.
Yeah, that little time didn't help enough, Betty, to think. I think some thoughts as to, are there, I'm going to say, other events, other activities that we maybe could or should be involved in would be helpful. Over the last several years, I've been focused very heavily in our fuels, biofuels, bioenergy side. That was one of the hats I wore. Since then, added a few. But kind of using that as an analogy, I think focusing on kind of where the challenges are, especially on an industry side. If there are other events, other stakeholder groups that we should be engaged with, we're definitely interested in continuing the conversation. And again, if there are things kind of within our programs themselves as to where there are some challenges, if we can simplify things, let us know. We're definitely up for that. We're always a little bit challenged, though, in a sense of when it comes to technology, especially internet technology or information technologies. But we're willing to put efforts where we can to help forward. So I think, again, just kind of knowing where your pain points are, maybe as to, especially if it's a program we're responsible for, we want to know that. Don't hesitate on reaching out to us to let us know where there are some challenges when you see some things.
In a little bit, I think there's going to be some immediate follow-ups. Me personally going to be looking to talk with our friends at DOD and NASA on a couple of the things on the procurement side. And we also mentioned things about the Farm Bill. So just by that nature, the implementation of some of those programs, there will be even somewhat formal opportunities to engage. We really... we'll be putting out regulations, so we'll be looking for, we'll be glad to, work through Karen to make sure that you're aware of anytime anything comes up, but looking for your comments. Again, it's like getting to the table and participating in that process of how, the legislation comes out from Congress, the regulation is how the agency is going to put it in there. We do open to the public. We do welcome your feedback to comment on what we're doing. Well, you can even request that we would have a stakeholder, meeting if when, maybe it's going to be when, we're going to do some regulatory work. We're happy to convene that, whether it be in person or virtually. So there will be opportunities for you to participate in how the portions of the Farm Bill get implemented.
Well, what if someone, the Farm Bill language about public-private partnerships, is that going to have to be proposed as a regulation moving forward? If somebody had a partnership around roads in a region, or is that going to be a regulatory process?
I think that was more in the manager's notes
Report
portion.
language.
Yeah, report language. So that is not part of statute. So that could even be just comments you received on how you kind of think we put it in place, or that's going to be more on some policy on how the department would go ahead and do that. I'm going to let Mark.
Yeah, I would agree, especially on kicking off. Maybe there are some ideas that we can work through either through a pilot or through a demonstration. We have many other areas that we're involved in partnerships simply just because it makes sense, through the program or through the activities without a regulation in place. If it requires expenditures of funds, there are maybe a few more hurdles to hop. But still, I think it's going to come mostly down to policy and setting direction forward rather than regulation.
I just want to say to you, the program, the Farm Bill, that program was written for you. It's not for us. We are just the stewards. We've been authorized to administer that program. It's got nothing to do with me. It's about you and what the industry wants to see done. So again, that's where we're going to look out for, to participate in this. It's from the DC perspective, it's incredibly important. I've seen it over the years where your voice has strong influence on how the department or rural development implements policy.
So in case you can't tell, I am the individual that's just started in the government probably, I started January of 2018. And before that, I had a career in the private industry. So things that the federal government has to go through, the regulatory process, I always thought the Farm Bill, all the work was done when they were writing it, as Congress was having these field hearings and trying to figure out what was in the Farm Bill. If you see the other side, what goes into the implementation that can take years sometimes, it's a whole different story. And so these guys are the experts on the regs writing, the history behind what we've done before, how we can get things done. And they've been very tolerant when I just lose all patience and say, you're kidding me. You have to do it that way? That is ridiculous. Where's the common sense? And they haven't swung at me yet. I probably turn my back and they're making faces at me. But and I don't know what your experience is with dealing with the federal government, but I will say this is individuals, stakeholders are heard. you do have an opportunity to speak up, and these kind of events are important. And sometimes it seems as if we're not paying attention because things take so long, and that is not the case. At least not as long as I'm here. I think, and we have a good team here. There may be other areas that you feel like you're ignored, but I do know that we have a team here at Rural Development that cares and really wants to make a difference and hear from you all. And so stay persistent, stay hard-headed, and really keep that passion, because it does make a difference. And meetings like this, your time, your effort, and communicating is really important. So don't give up on us.
Okay. Thank you. And, I can't say enough, John McIntosh, who works with Bobby and Angie back there, a few years ago, he was asked to testify before the Senate Agriculture Committee, and a lot of good questions that day, but I think he summarized it well, that at the end of the day, there will never be a bioeconomy if no one buys these products. So I think on that note, unless you have additional thoughts, thank you for all of this input. Catherine Lucas is going to pass out some surveys here. We're actually wrapping up a little bit ahead of schedule. We've got a couple more things with Lewis and Mike. But again, we wanted this to be a dialogue. Any last words from the room? Parting shots. Any final comments from folks out in the room? I'm really surprised at how quiet you've been today. Up, Kevin Caravati from Georgia Tech.
You need a microphone in. Throw your tomatoes that direction.
Well, I'm sorry. He's a UGA grad? Is that what I heard?
No.
Oh, okay.
We're not even going to go where I'm from.
Oh, okay. All right.
I've been trying to stay under the radar.
So is our football team. So, but we're not doing so well so far. But anyway, thank you very much. Just a comment about you mentioned a pain point, and from a technological university perspective, we would love to do more with USDA in a whole bunch of ways. We want to do more with the agricultural sector. We want to do more with the commodity growers to help them bring more innovations into their products, get more young people involved, get more students involved, and so forth. One of the challenges we face is that the DoD pays full overhead on all of their opportunities. Granted, they have bigger budgets and so forth, but USDA doesn't, and a lot of the other federal agencies don't. So when it comes down to requests for research, are they on the basic side or the applied side? If the full overhead isn't paid, the universities lose money. And if there's one change that could be made, I would suggest that. Make to USDA. Please think about how you can make yourselves as competitive with Department of Defense, because that's where the universities are heading toward. Granted, it's bigger budgets, but it's also those barriers are removed for us because we get pressure from our administrations to go where people pay the most. So if you can help out in that regard or consider it in some form or fashion, like I'll use state of Georgia as an example. They lowered tax or provided more tax incentives to bring more businesses here. The film industry has just absolutely taken off in the state of Georgia. If you can do similar things for the universities, not just the land grants, but also the technological universities, to bring the people that are going to work for Tesla and Facebook and Apple and folks like that, have them take a good look at these industries, you'll get the innovations that you're striving for. Thank you.
Yeah, no, we completely understand, and if we could had any control over that, we would do something that is actually dictated to us by Congress on what we can, allowable for overhead or indirect costs. We're actually kind of feel that pain ourselves, where Congress will ask us to take on some program and do it and not provide us any. We've ran a couple programs where we pretty much cannibalize our own budget to carry something out because they've asked us for something but did not move forward. I think federal government probably lags behind, clearly lags behind the private sector on some of these things, and it could be something that's happening, in the future. Again, I think really your voice is strong, is to communicate with your congressional folks. It's like these are bottlenecks or these are pain points for us to actually carry some of this stuff out. A lot of these things we don't see on a daily basis. If you're going to change policy or change law, they've got to hear from you.